Now, the way it worked is that the Star Wars was always a cover story for targeting in space interstellar vehicles using these scalar weapons, not lasers, not if it's at the speed of light, it's not fast enough. Everything important is faster than the speed of light. And so what happened is that he, at that point, got convinced. They sent just the right people in to convince Reagan that there was an existential alien threat. Basically what Wernher von Braun warned on his deathbed about, which we'll get to in a moment. And so Reagan bought into it. That's why you can Google this. At the UN, he said, wouldn't our job of uniting the world be easier if we could unite against a common alien threat? I'm paraphrasing, but you can look this up. Actually, Bill Clinton recently said that on Jimmy Kimmel, something very similar. The reason that happens is because there is a prevailing need for people who are in certain positions to be given what is, I call, targeted and tailor-made disinformation. Information that is geared towards scaring the hell out of them so they go along with the agenda of militarism as opposed to peaceful contact with these civilizations. And it's not hard to do if you have a certain orientation, if you have a certain mindset based on fear, xenophobia, us versus them, that whole mindset. So that's really the criteria. Whether someone is pulled in the loop of this secrecy in government or not has to do with what their values are, what their psychological profile is, whether they will go along with the agenda of secrecy. If they will not go along with the agenda of secrecy, they're not going to tell you anything. I don't care if you are the President of the United States or the CIA director or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But there have been people who do know in those same positions. Why? Because they were willing to go along with this chicanery. Now, if the next document you can put up, it's just a partial list of the sort of VIPs and government official I briefed. It goes 3 pages long. It's 50, 60, 70, and this is just a few of them. Every single one of these people, without exception, and you can scroll down through them, and just flip through. I'm not going to go through them all. We don't have time. It is a lot of work having private meetings with this many people. Every single one of these people, from Senator Claiborne Pell to the CIA director to the head of intelligence for the Joint Staff to the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the biggest intelligence gathering entity in the Pentagon, every single one of these people wanted to know but had been denied access to these unacknowledged special access projects. Every single one of them. That is the proof we have. If we ever had to go to court to prove that the operation is illegal. And these people, the ones still living, would be subpoenaed. Because, believe me, and I have more, one of them that you see on page 2 here is Lord Hill Norton. And if you go to this next document, this is a 5-star admiral. How many people have heard of Lord Hill Norton? He's actually a great guy. He passed away not long ago. I don't mind sharing these couple letters. I have a whole file with him. He asked me to come to his estate in England and brief him back in, I believe it was 1990s sometime. And he was a 5-star admiral, what they used to call Sea Lord. And Lord Hill Norton, is that the one? Is that the right one? Yeah. He had found out through other sources that UFOs were real and that there was a big operation in the UK that was this transnational, deep national security state working with the British. But he was head of the Ministry of Defense, and as such was head of MI5 and MI6. He was also head of the Military Committee for NATO. He had no knowledge of these projects the entire time he was in government. And when I met with him at his cottage, and you know what's kind of cute about it, at the second document, if you go to the next one, he says, I thoroughly enjoyed our talk when you came in August. This was in August of, I guess it was 1995. and I am grateful to you for your time. I read all the materials you left me, and I intend to read it all again. I also shared it with Countess Murray, who shares our interest. I have an idea you may have met her some time ago. I meet a lot of folks. I find your latest brief on the national security implications of the UFO subjects very clear and very convincing, and it goes on. It's a beautiful letter, and things he was going to do with the European Parliament and whatnot. He died not being able to accomplish as much as he wanted to with the British government because I had to explain to him why he never knew anything about this. And it's a very hard thing to sit with someone like a CIA director or someone like this, who's one of the most powerful people in the military and intelligence field in the world, and tell them, you just were not in the loop. And he basically said to me, well, why didn't they tell me? And he was a little hurt and kind of petulant. And I said, sir, I'm going to answer your question with a question. What would you have done if you'd found out there was a transnational entity, unacknowledged, running unconstitutionally in your country and mine, engaging in assassinations, keeping from the planet technologies that would save the earth from environmental destruction and eliminate poverty within a generation? And that they are using these technologies to try to provoke, as agents provocateurs, an interstellar conflict and World War III, and that they were completely off the reservation without any controls from the chief executive or the legitimate governments of the world. And he hopped up and down. He's this little guy with piercing blue. He says, I wouldn't have stood for it for a bloody minute. I said, well, that's why they didn't tell you. He says, what do you mean? He thought I was being impertinent. I said, because they knew you wouldn't go along with that agenda. Therefore, you were out of the loop. That's how it works. It's that simple. So you basically accumulate people who are enormously evil and who want to see terrible damage done to the planet because at their core, they love war and they love conflict. They do not want peace to break out. As one of them said to me, heaven forbid we should have peace on this planet. Too many people would be out of business. Too many of us would be out of business. Very cynical, but true. The next document is from one of my advisors to Admiral Tom Wilson. And it's about setting up a briefing for him. And I only put this up here because some people have challenged me, did you really have meetings with folks like this? Yes, absolutely. And it was on my birthday in 1995, the first letter was written. I ended up meeting with him in 97 in April. But he helped us in a number of ways prior to that, as did this Admiral Kramer, who set up my meetings at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the facility to which the crashed ET remains went in 1940s in Dayton, Ohio. And this meeting was another one where I was able to provide to him some very important information prior to the meeting, including a 1991 document, which has not been declassified, and I will go to that one next. It's the National Reconnaissance Office document. And that document is basically a security alert. And the reason it's important is not so much for its content or on the next page, which is a warning that a group of UFO buffs were trying to penetrate the perimeter of Area 51, so it's called. Nobody calls it that, really. It's the Nellis Range. But this was generated, and you can see the date, July 1991, and take a note of the distribution list, please. And we're going to get back to that in a moment. But it's a security blue fire, which is a code name, 1991, Commander's Net, Royal Ops, Cosmic ops. So cosmic clearance, you've heard of this? Not a myth, it's real. Magi ops, magi, as the majority, as the magic, M-A-J-I-C, ops. And it goes through a whole bunch of them, Nellis Division, all these code numbers, and you get down to some really interesting things. MOC is Military Operating Center, and MOA is a Military Operating Area, and SOG is a Special Operations Team. But you get into Red Flag, Dart East, Dart South, Pahut Mesa, Sally Corridor, Groom Lake, Dreamland, Blackjack Team. Blackjack Control is at the Edwards Complex in California. Roulette Team, Aquatech, Sea Spray, and others. Now, it's not clear to me who gave me this why they blacked out a couple of things. Maybe it was things that they were involved with personally and they didn't want to get fingered. But this secret document went to the admiral prior to our meeting, and he actually recognized one of these entities. And he made an inquiry, and it was being run by a contractor. We're going to get to this next. And the contractor, one of these corporate contractors, when he called them up, he said, I'm Admiral Tom Wilson. At that time, he was head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I want to be read into this project. Guess what happened? They said, sir, you don't have a need to know. Now, this is the guy who puts together the intelligence briefings for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. He was told, you don't have a need to know. And Admiral Wilson said, God damn it, if I don't have a need to know, who does? They said, sir, we cannot discuss this with you further. They hung up and blocked his line. Now, this all happened before the stand-up meeting I did where Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, and myself and my military advisor and a few other people met with the admiral in a stand-up, what's called a stand-up briefing. I was doing the presenting. That was supposed to be 45 minutes. It went for 2 or 3 hours. He kept canceling appointments downstream. This was at the Pentagon. And so I said, well, you know, sir, don't feel bad. And he looked at me. He said, well, who else is in this situation where this group is blocking access, who are in the national security apparatus? I said, well, the president, the CIA director, et cetera. And I started naming them, and he was just, the fear in his eyes, the palpable fear and anger that something this important, that is real and legitimate, and he knew it was, could escape the oversight of folks who have the security of the United States in their hands. So basically, they're trying to navigate without IFR. They're trying to navigate without radar through the dangers of the world, because the most important technologies and the most important information and the most critical national security secrets are completely out of their scope, off their radar. And yet they're responsible for keeping America safe, and they're responsible for protecting us, and they're responsible for responding to threats. And so at the end of the meeting, I asked him, I said, well, Admiral, do you think you can help us? And he just sat back in his chair, this big chair, he sat back. He said, look, he says, what I've learned from this meeting is that there is an illegal operation that has hundreds of billions of dollars, and over the years, trillions, that has technologies that can do circles around my B-2 stealth bomber, which is the best thing I know about. How am I going to take them on? And I said, well, it can't be through a military engagement. It has to be through infiltration. It has to be through convincing them to come up. He says, I don't know how to do that. They won't give me access. And moreover, I can't take any action unless the president authorizes it. And at that time, the president was Bill Clinton. And I said, well, no, he won't do that. He says, why? He says, well, we briefed the president. And his best friend came to my home and said that if he did this, he would end up like Jack Kennedy. And I'm quoting. He says, well, there you are then. Point, set, match. And I said, well, you know, someone's got to do it. invariably these people say, well, you can do it. And I learned, if you look at, there's a movie my wife and I saw this past week called Bridge of Spies, and you realize there's this attorney named Donovan in it. It's a true story based on the Gary Powers U-2 shoot down. And he was sort of the expendable guy. I'm the expendable guy. I'm the guy, it doesn't matter if they get killed. Because basically that's what Clinton's people told me. It doesn't matter if you get killed. We don't want the president to get killed. So, I mean, I know that's ugly, but it's the truth. So that's why I'm doing it.